Hey everyone, and welcome to the Climate Career Kit podcast. This is your host, Aishini Garg. If you are a high schooler looking for direction in climate change related careers, tune into every episode for advice from the diverse leaders in climate jobs today and learn about new and exciting opportunities that you can pursue. Today's guest is Alan Peevers, firmware developer at Caban Systems and partner of A Climate Change Game. We are so excited to have you for the 20th episode of the Climate Career Kit. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
So to start us off, how would you describe your job to a group of high schoolers?
Well, the job I've been doing up till now recently is as a firmware developer at a company that does renewable energy. So you have these cell towers all over the world, right? They take a lot of power to translate all those calls and transmit them. And in many countries, the grid isn't very reliable. And in some places, you need telecommunications when there is actually no grid at all. And the solution for that up till now has been to power these things off of diesel generators, which are running 24/7 in many cases. And it's extremely expensive because every couple of weeks you have to send a truck up some remote road to refill that tank. So we provide this solution, which is a bunch of solar cells, solar collectors, and batteries to store that power. So during the day, the sun is bright enough to power the tower as well as charge the batteries. And then at night when the sun goes down, it switches over to drawing power from the batteries. So it's pretty neat. It saves our customers a lot of money because they don't have to fill the tanks every 2 weeks. You just buy our product and it just boom. And so it potentially and depending where you are, the cost of electricity can be so high that this thing can actually pay for itself in as little as a year. In other countries, it might take a few years, but ultimately you're saving money over the long term. So it's a good play. And we're promoting this in many countries in the global South, Central America, South America, and now moving into perhaps Africa and Asia.
Yeah, of course.
So my job there has been to work on the firmware, which is low-level software, which interfaces with the circuit, which controls the batteries, because these lithium-ion batteries are finicky. Turns out many people that they just think, oh, you just plug it into a charger and it fills up and it empties. It's not true. You have to do a lot of care and feeding of these batteries, and so there's all this software that maintains that. And the stuff that I've been working on collects information about the health of the batteries and sends it up to the cloud, which the people that buy our product can then use to visualize where the conditions are needing to be intervened. You might need to send someone out once in a while to service something, or you just find out that we're getting more power from here than from here. So what's going on over there? So that's it.
Yeah, of course. So what drew you to this job specifically?
So two things drew me to it. One is it's renewable energy. So I believe that the world needs to transition as quickly as possible to a fully renewable energy supply. We can't be burning fossil fuels anymore, period. So any company that's building solutions in that space was going to get my attention first and foremost. And the second thing didn't occur to me until I started talking to the CTO more. And he said, what lights him up is that we're giving voice to people in the global South who, after all, are kind of the victims of this whole thing. They have done very little to contribute to the problem. And yet they're the ones who will suffer the most because they don't have resilient infrastructure, right? They don't have the capacity or the money, frankly, to put in huge breakwaters against flooding or to build giant levees, right, to prevent flooding and fires. Maybe they don't have a super well-funded fire crew to put out fires that might rage. So they're the victims, and here we are giving them voice. There are countries that don't have cell tower infrastructure yet, but they're building it out as they develop. And they're finding it harder and harder to do unless they use solutions like ours because there's no grid. So we also that we're providing a voice for the people who are most victimized, which will help move things faster because we hear from people that would otherwise not have been able to speak their existence, their plight.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So how does this job specifically connect to sustainability?
Well, it's sustainable because the energy is coming from the sun primarily.
Yes.
With some exceptions. I mean, there are times when we have to switch back to a generator. The sun's it's been cloudy for days on end, but it's certainly replacing the number of hours that are using fossil energy, right, with a renewable energy from the sun.
Yeah,
so it's very directly sustainable.
So, what does success look like for you in this job?
It's clearly going to be a success when the company grows to a very large size, like 500 million type of thing,
Hmm.
based on the sales. And
Hmm.
it's also energy as a service where we just provide the solution and they basically lease the equipment. They don't own it. But
Hmm.
either way, the idea is to get this technology into as many countries that need it as possible. And to me, success also means we have people that are online, doing podcasts like this, for example, sharing with the rest of the world what's going on in their country. I want to be able to view some guy in the street who's talking about what's going on in his village or her village
Hmm.
as a result of climate change. So we can realize, because we sit here in Northern California all cozy and like, oh, it's probably going to suck somewhere, but it would be much more visceral to see somebody who's really, really impacted.
Hmm.
And it would wake the rest of us up here in the north with sending all the CO2. It would be nice if we saw more and more people that were suffering so that we can have more compassion and maybe more motivation to get involved.
Yeah, of course. So can you tell me a little bit more about your climate change game?
Yes. So a few creative folks here that I've been knowing for the past bunch of years came up with this idea where it's a video game. You can download it. You have an island called Earth Island, and it's got forest, it's got uh, a city, it's got some mountains, just all different, kind of a smattering of typical terrestrial
Hmm.
formations, right? And you fly onto it from the sky, and you immediately encounter the fact that it's got some problems.
Hmm.
And the first thing you see is that sea level rise has caused the coastline to be greatly diminished, and there's water coming up where it shouldn't. And you travel over to the city and you see that there's flooding in the street. So as you travel around, typical game style, you encounter more and more issues that have clearly cropped up because of climate change.
Hmm.
And when you discover another issue, for example, you come out to a field and all the trees are cut down, and you see a chainsaw and you go, oh shit. So that's the, oops. So that's the root
Hmm.
cause. You discover the root cause of that problem, which is cutting.
Hmm.
And when you discover it, a globe comes up out of the ground and you can spin it, and you'll see all these points on the globe, which are each individual locations on the planet today, which is actually deploying a solution to that specific problem.
Yeah.
So for the trees, you would find
Hmm.
places that are doing rapid regenerative forestry, called afforestation. And so as you discover, so you go off and you click on the globe, and it brings you to that, and you have educational material. It can be reading, or it can be a Zoom call with a live, scientist. It can be just canned videos. As you can imagine, there's many modalities for education, right? So we think
Yeah.
of it as a platform for climate change solution education. We take
Yeah.
much of our inspiration from regeneration.org,
Hmm.
which is a very cool organization which talks about 100 solutions, roughly 100.
Hmm.
And this is a platform for experiencing those 100 solutions directly. And then when you learn that stuff, you bring it back to the island, and that thing that brought you to that solution has suddenly been improved.
Mm.
And you do this over and over again. And you can form teams with other people from around the world. It's mostly for young people, but we believe all ages will find it
Yeah.
interesting.
That's incredibly cool. And I'm sure it's a very, very good education resource to educate people about climate change and solutions. So, what advice do you have for someone who wants to pursue a career in a sustainable field?
Before I answer that, I want to just put in a plug for the game itself. It's Earth Island Game.
Yes, I will link that on my website with this
Thank you so much.
episode.
Appreciate it.
So all
Thank
the
you.
listeners can head over there and play it.
Yeah. So my advice on that, especially as you're starting out, is to first remember what you love to do. Yeah, think about the things that are really interesting to you. If you start from that place and then find places in the sustainability field that seem to evoke or draw from that, then you'll be much better off than if you just do something because you think you should, right? If you just go and say, well, I have to get a job in renewable energy because that's the most important thing, but you really like agriculture, that's probably not going to last, right?
Mhm.
So if you are interested in farming and agriculture, then you want to learn about regenerative agriculture because that's kind of in your sweet spot, right? And if you're interested in engineering, well, that's a big one, because if you're doing software, there's millions of companies that are all looking for software engineers. Bless you.
Thank you.
So that one's the most versatile in some ways, because it's just no matter what, if you're doing software, there's a company that you kind of jibe with that could use your skills. But if you're doing like electrical engineering work, you might find that you want to work on renewable energy, because that's a very engineering heavy thing. And similarly, if you're interested in finance, there's a lot of climate finance, there's climate tech.
Yeah.
So find the things that light you up, and then find the overlap between that and sustainable work, not the other way around.
Yeah, of course. So, kind of going off of that question, are there any resources or opportunities that you can recommend for high schoolers who are interested in sustainable careers?
Yes, there are, absolutely. So most of you guys probably use Slack in some form or other. So I recommend a few different Slack communities, and you may have heard all these already, but I'll just rattle them off. There's Work on Climate, which has grown like crazy. When I joined, they had like 8,000 people, and now it's, I think, 20,000. So that's super busy, and there's lots of channels, based in software engineering, climate change founders, finance, energy, all these different channels. So you find the channels that you groove with, and you spend time networking there. And the key word being networking, right? All these things are about making the connections, having calls like this with people where you get to know each other, exploring possibilities, right? It all starts with a conversation. So Work on Climate is one. Terra.do is another one, which is a climate change school. That's another plug. These guys are great. I don't know how many young people are in Terra, but it's basically a 12-week class, and you get exposed to lots of different areas in the climate change space. As you can imagine, there are many. And they're super well organized. These lessons are digestible, and you can do it for like 12 hours a week kind of thing. That's the time commitment. And at the end of which, you've got a much richer network of people in the space. And you've also been exposed to enough things that hopefully you will have found a few that are really interesting to you personally.
Yeah.
So I recommend them, and they have a big Slack community. And then there's My Climate Journey. That's the third one that comes to mind right away. Another large Slack community, and they do lots of talks. You can just go every week and you can find another talk. And they do podcasts, as you know. I know those guys, and they're great. They're really, really great. And then there's kind of recruiting firms. I don't know how much they do with kids out of high school. It's mostly people that are out of college, but maybe. So Climate Base is one, and they have job posting like every week, maybe even every day. I don't know. But you just peruse the listings, and there's just tons, and you find the ones that are interesting and network. But the thing I want you to remember is really be talking to people. Nothing happens without talking to people. You can start with email, but you really want to get somebody on the phone or on a Zoom call, because that's how the relationships get built. Go to shows, go to climate shows. Next week is SF Climate Week. If you have time and you can get up there and you're in the Bay Area, go to SF Climate Week. And there's things going all year round. There's always something.
Especially next Saturday. It's Earth Day next Saturday.
Right.
So there's so many events. There are people there. You can talk to them.
You can talk to us in Santa Cruz. We'll be out there on the street with our climate game.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insights. I really appreciate it. And to all the listeners, make sure to tune in to the next episode of the Climate Career Kit.